Monday, February the 18th, 2013. Here we are at the offices of CFTe Index, getting ready for another meeting of the UK chapter of the Market Technicians Association. And here with me is Head of Technical Analysis for Aviate Global, Riccardo Ronco, a very good friend of mine, preparing to give a presentation on trend following. Before we proceed with the presentation itself, we will be doing a short interview with Riccardo, where we'll be getting to know a bit more about the man behind trend following. So, Riccardo, the first question for me would be, could you please give us some information about your personal and your professional educational background before getting involved with technical analysis?
I've been always in love with mathematics and computers and physics, but my parents they didn't believe in the use of computers to make a career, so they said go to economics and commerce is the right path. And I did study, but the lightning strike, the thing that really hit me big time was studying during the forecast of the markets. They were talking about the distinction between fundamentals and technician. Until then, I was happy to use computers, and I was happy to use mathematics for formulas and equations. And then all came all together. It was just something that said, oh, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to use computers to study the markets, to study the mass psychology, and see the result, how it is. And so from that point onwards, all my efforts have been focusing on studying the markets in a quantitative way.
Quantitative, okay. So how was your first involvement with technical analysis? Because although I understand that you had the desire to be quantitative, what led you to technical analysis?
Well, at the very beginning was an article on Scientific American, I think in 1984, 1985, and it was about bull and bear in a ring, and they were using moving averages, and there was the game of life. It was a kind of simulation of agents, that was the word, that could reproduce according to certain rules. And they were trying to create a simulation of the stock market with simple rules and see the evolution of the results, to see if there is a population of trend followers, or an environment that was able to escape to a certain direction, or it was instead being reverting. And so I studied into chaos theory a bit, and neural networks. And then I realized that a system is so complex that you need something very, very robust. And going back maybe to, in a way, normal technical analysis rather than sophisticated, excessively sophisticated tools was the right answer.
Mm-hmm. And as I understand, you're head of technical analysis for Aviate Global?
Yes, that's correct.
And could you please describe for us your day-to-day responsibilities and also the most challenging aspect of your job?
Well, the challenging job is to, as a trend follower, is to try to spot the change of trends. That's the most important thing. When we approach clients from a technical point of view, we always make clear that the job is to spot a trend and to ride it as long as possible. It's not difficult to find the beginning of a new trend. It's actually stick with it. And especially if a client misses the beginning of the trend, try to find the correct entry point. So the routine of the day is running my models, finding ideas. There is a bit of subjective judgment because, of course, I try to select a certain number of stocks and markets that can be of interest, but everything is filtered with models. So I don't try to override what the models are saying. That's a very dangerous experience. I don't want to repeat, everyone makes mistakes.
So what part of your work would you say, how much of your work would you say is discretionary and how much is it systematic?
I would say I spent a lot of time in trying to find models that I can trust. So in a way, 75% to 80% is objective, and the remaining 20% is because sometimes you have 2 or 3 stocks that have similar patterns, but then you look at volume, and that volume tells a slightly different story. So given the choice, you try to give more weight to volume. If it was completely an objective work, you kind of give 200 recommendations for the Dow Jones stocks, 200 large cap. You have to make a restricted number of stocks.
I understand. So, okay, which brings me to my next question. It's the part of the interview we call the toolbox. Could you please talk about your favorite tools and techniques, and how, first of all, what is your specialization? Is it anything other than trend following that you employ in your day-to-day methodology?
Certainly. When you begin with technical analysis, you can't help to learn all the indicators, and I went through the kind of phase, the kind of youth phase, in which you really back engineer and dismantle every indicator. You reprogram, it could be in Visual Basic or Station or MetaStop. You have to understand the indicator. Then you come to the conclusion that you want to avoid a collinearity, that is having 50 indicators telling you the same thing, correct? So you want information about the trend, whatever it is the definition of trend that you want to use. You want an idea about volatility. You want to have an idea about momentum and relative strength of that particular time series against competitors, because you have different choices, different options. And then volume, if available, if you are, of course, following Forex. So these tools, you could use crossing or moving averages or chain breakout. You can have the MSTA or the stochastic or size. So you have a specific indicator for a specific job. And then you put everything together and try to come with a coherent message in the markets.
Thank you. And which people have been your greatest influences? For example, if I ask you to name the top 3 analysts or books to recommend, which would this be?
But that's very easy, because the first group are the people that built my foundation, let's say, from a philosophical point of view of technical analysis. It was Martin Pring, Perry Kaufman, and John G. Murphy. All these 3 elements have the quantitative side, the idea of the intermarket technical analysis, that is one of the most powerful, beautiful, I would say, inventions in technical analysis, because it's the idea of the ratio, the relative strength that was used on a stock against the index, but pushed to the limit to compare different asset classes. That's a very powerful thing, and the study done in the past by John G. Murphy. And of course, Martin Pring, the idea to use pattern indicators in an objective and systematic way. It was maybe the first that I saw when I started with technical analysis or reading his books.
Okay, which tempts me to ask you, departing from this, at the next level, next stage of your education, which authors or work did you follow?
Well, then of course, you find that the thing you like the most, and at the moment I have to say the most refreshing book was Midbane Faber, the Ivy Portfolio, because he didn't invent moving averages, but what he does in his book is to put a simple recipe on multi-asset class that requires minimum time, gives you the texts on multi-time frame. That's the way a book should be written, not about 300 indicators, but give me an approach, show me how it works, make an implementation, and so I can replicate this easily with an Excel. You don't need to use particular software. You can replicate, and if you're happy, you can trend it. Why not? Or make it more difficult.
Okay. Technical analysis principles. Again, if you could distill your knowledge in 3 axioms, for example, I would say, the first one would be follow the trend. What would these 3 axioms be?
Well, it's the basis of what you see from Gunn, anyway. Follow the trend, cut your losses short, and let the profits let the profits run. Is the most difficult. They're so simple, but just violate one of those 3, and it doesn't work. And I think they're important for a reason.
I understand. That's why they've been so classic. Okay, switching from tools to careers. If you could pick up the phone and give a call to young Riccardo, just starting out, what kind of advice would you give him regarding his involvement in capital markets?
Oh, nice question, this one. Well, first of all, a lot of changes technology. When I had to order books with credit cards, it took ages for them to come from the States to Italy at the time. And with the internet, you can check everything. But I think the suggestion is have a strong desire for a particular subject. Don't let the momentary setbacks in the economy or in other things to let you take a back seat. Always be aggressive, take the initiative, and believe in your ability to overcome any anything that the system can throw at you.
Okay, so which brings me to my last question. Fun fact. What does Riccardo do outside of market hours? What do you do, for example, to relax? Do you have any hobbies?
Yes, at the moment is my family, is my hobby. I'm very traditional on this one, so I try to not to make the mistake that unfortunately saw with some of my colleagues. They were obsessed completely by analysis, and unfortunately that have an effect. And for me, my asset is my family. So
your family life.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, Riccardo, thank you very much for this interview. This is Alex Spiroglou for the UK chapter of the Market Technicians Association. Thank you very much all for tuning in.